This is Abe Friedtanzer from cinemadailywest.com, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Andrea Riseborough and Michael Morris about their film To Leslie. How are you both doing today?
Oh, really well, thank you.
Very well, thanks. Nice to be here.
Great. I'm excited to get to revisit this film. I had the chance to watch it virtually during South by Southwest. And it's always nice. Andrea, I feel like every festival I go to, you're always in at least one or two movies there. And so it's
huge apologies for that.
No, it's nice. Can you tell me what appealed to you about this role in particular?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, that it was just a beautiful, beautiful script. That said, I may not have seen it had Michael not brought it to my attention, because the relationship that Michael and I had formed on Bloodline was wonderful. And so when he brought this project, and I felt like it had fired him up, which so I think so few scripts do. It sounds awful to say that, because people are writing brilliant things all the time, but not everything brilliant gets through, you know. And there are a lot of sort of commissions, if you will. And this was not a commission. This was this was somebody's heart on the page, somebody who was excellent at their craft, screenwriting, but also somebody telling their own personal story, and that's of course very rare in of itself. And the idea of making it with Michael, I just felt like I trusted in every way that this would be an intimate time spent with a character. And it was in so many ways. It was narratively, it was in terms of it dramatically, and it also was visually, because it was on film. So it was a very immediate, fast process. And we didn't have a lot of time to shoot it. And it was a lot of it was a huge challenge, but so it felt so fulfilling. Felt like a really fulfilling thing to be doing, if that makes sense.
Of course. And Michael, Andrea mentioned Bloodline. I know you've done a lot of TV, like Better Call Saul, All for All Mankind, Smash. What was it about this script that got you to make the jump from TV to your debut film?
Yeah, I mean, I think I fell in love with a lot of what Andrea was describing there, which, you know, for me was something that operates in a very different rhythm to television. I mean, television doesn't have the same rhythm anymore. You know, there's all kinds of things from, you know, some of the stuff I do, Better Call Saul you mentioned, or House of Cards has its own center of gravity, or Mr. Robot would as well. I imagine. I haven't done that one. But nonetheless, there is a sort of, there is a rhythm of storytelling and rhythm of exploration that you get to do in TV. And this movie was different. This movie didn't ask anything of Leslie other than to exist, you know, and that's one of the things that I was really drawn to, the opportunity to spend a couple of hours with someone, you know, not with them because they're about to do something heroic, or with them because they're about to rob a bank, or with them because X, Y, and Z, just to be with them. And therefore, it was really a movie about being human, you know, and as a storyteller, that's the most interesting thing. And it's very rare that, as Andrea says, that a script engages in that. And that's really the primary thing. And I knew the moment I read it that it had to be Andrea playing it, because she's an extraordinarily non-judgmental actress. You know, sometimes we instinctively judge the people that we're playing or working with because we want them to be a certain way, or we try and wrestle them. And I knew that Andrea would come at it in this very human way.
What I think is very interesting is that Leslie is a character, it's easy to root for her, but not easy to celebrate her, because she very often doesn't do the right thing. She tries and she fails, and it can be sort of painful to watch that journey. But I think this is also a very affirming story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer briefly, Andrea. I mean, yes, I agree with you. I do think it's affirming. And I think, but my hope, you know, and I think what we set out to make was not a film that was going to guide us to an affirming place. It was going to stay with someone who, yeah, can be really frustrating, because she's human, like we said, because humans aren't perfect. And, you know, she's got her own set of challenges that I think a lot of us have struggled with in some ways. But that when we get to an ending that feels real, sometimes that can be an upswing, you know, sometimes that can affirm.
And I think there's something really relatable about Leslie's sort of cycle of shame she goes through, which is really in the most obvious and clear way related to her addiction. But I think in just a very human way, we've all had expectations of ourselves and wanted to do well and not been able to do so in some realm. This is like watching that in extremis, you know, but the way that the film is presented without great swells of sympathetic music or sensational sound to sort of underpin and direct us toward one emotion or another. The way that it's presented, I think we all get to experience, to relate to it really deeply. Whether we've been through, and I mean, of course, so few people have won the lottery, battled with addiction and become homeless. I mean, the odds of that are really quite slim, that somebody would have had a similar experience. But the humanity, I think, is the thing that transcends.
Yeah, we've all had the
narrative.
experience of being the cause of loving people, right? We've all experienced loving people. We've all experienced hurting people in one way or another. So I think, yeah.
Mm.
And this film is set in Texas. Obviously, neither of you are from Texas or from the United States. Do you think there's something particularly American about this story, or is it more universal than that?
It's interesting because we both live in the US. But I sort of didn't realize till after the fact that that we're British, and that sounds completely bonkers, but it wasn't a concern as we stepped into it. Of course, you in every way want to. The original story is not set in Texas, or the story that potentially this is loosely based on is not about Texas. So this whole, in many ways, this creation of Ryan's, our writer, was from the ground up, because the Texan part of the story, which is something that Michael had honed in on eventually as a great setting for the story, was something that felt absolutely right and really, really interesting. And so although neither of us are American or Texan, we from the ground up were able to build a life. And to sort of carefully craft that journey is really a fulfilling experience. Those are the type of experiences those are one of the things that always make me want to continue to do my job, you know, discovering different walks of life in different parts of the world. Yeah,
Of course.
I can completely see that. And I think what your job is when you're making films, whether you're directing, writing, acting, whatever it is you have to, at every point, I think, satisfy truth. You know what I mean? You have to make this thing, whatever it is that you're building, whether, feel true and operate the way that something would operate if it was truthfully told. You know, we don't say, for instance, well, this movie is set on a journey between the moon and Mars. Now, obviously, neither of you have been between the moon and Mars, because, you know, what we're trying to do is make something that feels real. And I think this movie, just the script, I should say, spoke to me as someone who grew up in London and now lives in America, much as I hope it speaks to someone who grew up in Texas. That the clothing, the American iconography, the diner, the freeway, the phone booths, the laundrettes, the bars, I love that. Like, that to me is, and it's our job to try and make that feel as authentic as possible. But I'm always, reminded in this subject of, like, behind me is one of my favorite films, Paris, Texas. You know, a big influence of mine, and of course made by a German director. And there are these wonderful stories all the way around of cultures being seen from people who are on the margins or on the outsides of those cultures, who get to see it a certain way, so.
Have you received any surprising reactions from people who have seen the film?
Surprising reactions. I'm always surprised. I guess I'm not really surprising. I think it's always encouraging to me when people feel as much as they tend to at the end of the film for Leslie. I mean, really for her, like wanting her to keep going in the direction that they've been seeing her go in. And that always surprises me in the moment, because it's what you said, actually, halfway through the movie, they would have been like, why is she so annoying? Like, she's so frustrating. And to see people make that turn with her at the end is very gratifying.
I've not thought about this before, so it's a really interesting question, Abe, but I think there's some sort of correlation between how well a movie turns out and how many surprises you get afterwards. There've not been a great deal of surprises in terms of people coming out and having completely misunderstood something, you know, which does happen. And that tends to happen when a film hasn't worked very well, to be honest. You know, there's really left field responses where you think, oh, right, that was not the intention. But that's very interesting, but that's what you got from it. I think the resounding feedback has been compassion, huge connection to orbiting somebody like Leslie, or to having been in Leslie's position and having wreaked that havoc on other people. And we've all, at some point in our lives, been in one or the other position, and sometimes both. And so the responses have been really profound and incredible. And we've had some amazing conversations, to the point where I felt a bit like a therapist at times. But we've had some really, really wonderful conversations, because it affected us so deeply. We made it, and now it's affecting other people deeply. And it's also, everyone understands the lightness of Leslie and her cheeky sense of humor and her vivacity and the sort of hilarious irony of the situation, and a vast awareness of how she's fucking up. And there's something that's incredibly addictive about that in of itself, and compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, for more great conversations like this, please subscribe to the Cinema Daily US YouTube channel. Congratulations, Andrea, on your Independent Spirit Award nomination, and good luck to both of you with this film and in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Abe.